Welcome everybody back into NerdSesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and we apologize that we did not have our normal Sunday night live reaction show to everything that we saw around the NFL yesterday. The reason for that, as we said beforehand, I'm in Buffalo right now. I was at the Bills-Titans game yesterday. I got to see Amari Cooper's debut, which was a ton of fun, and ultimately a pretty dominant Bills win even after a shaky start. So here we are Monday morning, bringing it all to you guys. Now, we're not going to talk about every single game in the way that we normally do on our Sunday night reactions. We're kind of going to cover the biggest games and biggest stories of the day. And Logan, I think that starts with Vikings-Lions. Huge divisional matchup. The undefeated Vikings against the one-loss Lions. Detroit ends up coming away with this one in the final seconds. What did you take away from this?
You know, I took away that I do think I was right in having the Lions over the Vikings. And it's not the most vindicating result, but there were a few things that really impressed me about Detroit from this game. One, the difference in quarterback play. There is a different level of confidence that I have in Jared Goff. Just operating this offense, being on time. I was really impressed with Goff, man. And I still think that Goff could be the biggest limiter about Detroit and their playoff hopes. You know, it feels like he's always due for a bad game. It's always lingering around the corner. But I thought Goff has had a phenomenal few weeks, and I thought he played a great one in this game. Like, especially where I really want to give him credit is Goff is an excellent play-action passer, man. When the Lions can get running between the tackles with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs early, and it wasn't even Montgomery really in this game. Montgomery gets injured very early in this one. He's got a bad fumble that ends up in a Vikings TD in this game. It's mostly Jahmyr Gibbs. He's got a 50-yard TD in this game too, but just how on time he was with Amon-Ra, bro. He is throwing these balls with such anticipation. Like, I have a different level of Jared Goff and than I do in Sam Darnold. And I thought Darnold came back to earth a little bit in this game too, but I was also impressed with how Detroit was able to, one, play without Aiden Hutchinson on the D-line. Now, I do think you noticed a real difference. Darnold's got a few plays in this game where he's got a lot of time to make plays, but I thought they made up for it, right? The secondary, I thought, played an excellent game. Brian Branch continues to blow me away. He's got 3 interceptions in 2 games. And the other component I was really impressed with Detroit outside of those guys was I thought Ben Johnson won the chess match against Brian Flores, man. Like, specifically, I thought he did a really good job of weaponizing Minnesota's aggressive scheme against themselves. And what I mean by that is really cleverly designed pre-snap motion where they're getting trap blocks on blitzing defenders that just open up gaping holes for Jahmyr Gibbs to run through, as well as that touchdown from Goff to Amon-Ra St. Brown. The Vikings are really aggressive. They have the 42% blitz percentage. That's number 2 in the NFL, and this has been a dominant defense because of that. But I thought Ben Johnson did a phenomenal job of weaponizing their aggression against themselves, specifically that TD from Goff to Amon-Ra. There's no safety help over the top. Blitz gets home immediately. Goff finds him in the back of the end zone. So don't get me wrong. I think both of these teams are top 10. I think this Vikings defense is everything that it has been touted up to be. And they're very close. But I prefer Goff to Darnold. I thought Ben Johnson outcoached Brian Flores in this game. And I was really impressed with how resilient the Detroit Lions defense was in this one without Aiden Hutchinson. Again, they're missing a very key component to their pass rush, but I thought McNeil played a good game. I thought Trevor Nowaski, who I've never heard of before this game, I thought really filled in well for them. And, the Lions played a really good game. These teams are really close together, but I thought they were really resilient in this one without Hutchinson.
I do think these teams are very close. Let me just ask you this before I get into my spiel, because you say both these teams are still top 10. You have been slower in terms of buying in on the Minnesota Vikings. I think these are 2 of the 3 best teams in football right now. Did this game to you affirm that Minnesota is more legitimate? Because they lose, but they really, really went toe-to-toe with Detroit, and I know you've been skeptical of them.
I've been skeptical about Sam Darnold.
Compared to the consensus.
Compared to the consensus, for sure. And I'm still skeptical in the same ways about Minnesota that I am. The defense is legit. I have no questions about the defense. And, even though Detroit puts up points, this is a great offense, a great offensive line. And in a lot of ways, the thing that really impressed me the most about Minnesota is how strong they were in the trenches. Again, I know they lose this one. There are some some snaps in this game where, like, there's a 4th-and-1 early in this, or there's a 4th down early in this game. That was a dumb play call by Dan Campbell to go for it early in the game. But there's another later play in this game where it's 4th-and-1, and the Vikings completely stonewall Detroit. I still have my questions about Sam Darnold, and I'm still skeptical about him and this team's long-term outlook. And don't get me, I mean, Justin Jefferson still can make up for a lot of what Sam Darnold does. That guy's a freak. Like, some of the catches he has in this game are ridiculous. But I was really impressed with Minnesota in the trenches, and I may move Minnesota into my top 5. This may be the week. I'm saving that for later. We're going to get into power rankings.
Get him
but
in there.
Minnesota's going to move up my power rankings.
I remain really, really impressed by Minnesota, and I don't think you can possibly look at this and say, oh my God, they lost a game in the last 15 seconds on a game-winning field goal to the Detroit Lions, and write off the fact that they've been not just undefeated up to this point, but that they destroyed the Texans, right? That they controlled that entire football game against the Giants, or against the Niners, I should say. Well, and the Giants. They just destroyed the Giants. That they were drubbing the Packers before that second half comeback, which really never put them in serious danger. Like, if you are somebody who has been a Viking skeptic and you're trying to seize this as your moment to say, oh, see, they weren't really that good, I think that would be ridiculous. This, again, affirms my confidence in this team, and I honestly think, Logan, it's so close. I think I still slightly prefer them within this division, only because of the Aiden Hutchinson injury. And I thought that Detroit compensated well for that. I thought that their defensive line was good in this game, and they got some pressure, but I still think that is a really significant loss for this defense. I just think I have some more questions about the Detroit defense than I do the Minnesota offense. Both these teams are absolutely elite on the other side of the ball, respectively. I think at this point, though, that's why I still slightly prefer Minnesota, because I thought Darnold played pretty well. He threw the one interception. Brian Branch made an incredible play there. He's just a dude. I mean, he's an absolute monster on this Detroit defense. But outside of that, I mean, he threw an incredible ball on that touchdown to Justin Jefferson, who also made an incredible play because that's just what he does. Maybe he bailed on a couple of pockets where you would have liked to see him hang in there and throw, but he also made some plays with his legs, scrambling under pressure, which he's done more this year than I expected. He has the arm talent. He's not getting rattled under there, right? He's going through his progressions, and he can make a lot of these throws, and he can move relatively well. Like, the bar for Darnold that we've set throughout this year is, can he be Jared Goff? That seems like a realistic ceiling. I do prefer Goff, and I thought that did show in this game. And by the way, I think that Jared Goff is playing arguably the best football of his life right now. I mean, he is just standing and delivering dots. And you talk about a couple moments where Darnold's pocket presence maybe wasn't quite as sturdy as you want. There's one play in this game where the pass rusher takes a swipe, hits Goff's off arm, his non-throwing arm. He just steps up in the pocket unfazed.
I've never seen that level of composure from Goff. That blew me away.
It was unbelievable. It was like he was brushing off a fly. He didn't care at all. And then, by the way, I mean, it took a second for somebody to finally get open over the middle of the field. He made a hell of a throw there. He's completing 74% of his passes. He leads the league in passing yards per attempt and passer rating. And it's just that composure that really stands out right now. I'm not saying that we're not going to have another Jared Goff moment this year. He has thrown 4 picks this year. Not bad, but like we know, he is one of the more turnover-prone quarterbacks in football. It's gotten better in Detroit, but there's still that tendency in a big moment at times to do something stupid. But I've been really, really impressed by him. I think he is playing the best football of his life, and this Detroit offense just feels unstoppable when it's all clicking. They're second in passing efficiency. They're ninth in rushing efficiency, but we know that's the true backbone of this offense. Best O-line in football, best running back tandem in football. And you mentioned, like, the Minnesota defense is great. They play well, and Detroit still puts 31 on them. It is so impressive what they're doing on that side of the ball. But again, I look at Minnesota, I think they played Detroit toe-to-toe. And I think if you avoid that one Darnold mistake, of course, they get reciprocally the fumble recovery for a touchdown. So you can't just play the, turnovers went against them game, because they didn't in this one. They were even on turnovers. They were almost exactly even in yardage. Like, they were even in so many areas in this game. But again, I think that I have slightly more questions about the Detroit defense than I do the Minnesota offense, because you're going to get TJ Hawkinson back. That's another weapon in the receiving game. They run the ball really well. I think Aaron Jones is a stud. He has a phenomenal touchdown run in this game. I think these are two elite football teams. And I think if your takeaway from this game is anything other than that, then I think you're just wrong.
I agree with you. And you know what? I think that might be the right logic to have, Carson, because I think that Detroit overachieved a little bit in this one defensively, just with Hutchinson out. And the Minnesota defense is loaded. There are so many guys I just want to give shout-outs to here, man. Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, Cam Bynum on the back end. And the star of the show, the guy that has blown me away routinely every single week is Ivan Pace Jr. I continue to be blown away. The guy is not only a great pass rusher, he's a great run stuffer. He can supplement as a linebacker in the middle of the field if you need him to make play. Like, he leads the team in tackles today. The guy is just a playmaker. He's a stud. He's a guy that I just want on the football field for my defense. I'm going to hold out judgment. I've been a Lions guy all season long. But I agree with you. I think that, the NFC North is just disgustingly loaded. And I do think, like, Green Bay, Detroit, Minnesota are all very close. I think Detroit and Minnesota are atop those three teams. And Minnesota is very, very close to Detroit. That I may come around to your end, Carson. By season's end, depending on how the Detroit pass rush looks without Hutchinson, if they had Hutch, I would definitively give it to him. And to spoil some of my power rankings, I will have Detroit over Minnesota in them this week. But Minnesota's not far off, dude, and they continue to impress me week in, week out. I think they've got the second best defense in football next to Kansas City. I would hear an argument for them number one, even with Detroit putting up 30 points on them. The one thing I will say, in a hypothetical matchup between these two teams down the line, say in the playoffs if they play again, I think that Flores is going to have to strike that balance defensively between being hyper-aggressive, because I just think Ben Johnson, clearly this team had studied. They were prepared for some of these these exotic blitzes. Like, they knew what they were going up against, and they knew how to directly counter what Minnesota's defense was going to do. Yeah. So I think it's going to be a bit of an adjustment. I think Brian Flores might have to reel in the aggression a little bit, because he overplayed his hand a little bit, I thought, in some situations. But these teams are very close. I do agree with you. They're elite. And Minnesota's, I may have been a little slow, man. Minnesota is trending upwards for me, man. I continue to be impressed week after week. They're exceptionally well coached, and they're exceptionally talented.
They really are. I don't think there's really much of a debate that these are the top two teams in the NFC. I don't know. Maybe some other people would throw a third NFC North team in the mix. We'll do our power rankings quickly at the end of the show today, as you mentioned. But if you are a Sam Darnold skeptic, this isn't your victory lap, man. Like, he made one mistake, and he played a pretty damn good football game outside of that. He just has the tools. He's clearly matured. He's in an offensive system where you expect him to thrive. Like, he's a solid starter. You just can't deny that. And with solid quarterback play from Darnold, with all these weapons on offense and with this defense, like, that's a Super Bowl contender. I just don't think you can look at Sam Darnold as that sort of glaring red flag. Like, yes, when we're talking about the elite teams, okay, then it becomes a question. But against the vast majority of the teams, it just doesn't matter. And Darnold's far from playing badly. He's played well consistently this year. He hasn't had a bad game, really. He wasn't very good against the Jets, but he's been pretty damn good overall. Let's talk about the other game of the day on paper, Logan. Super Bowl rematch. Chiefs, Niners. Kansas City remains undefeated. They march into Santa Clara. They pick up a win in this one. What did you take away from this?
My first big take was you just see how much more limited both of these offenses are without their playmakers. I mean, this is a grimy game from what we're traditionally accustomed to with both of these teams, like down Rashee Rice, down Isaiah Pacheco. Shout out Kareem Hunt for doing his thing. Shout out Mecole Hardman. Man, this was a weird game. Like, especially for San Francisco. Coming into this game, you know, they're already down Christian McCaffrey. They're down Deebo Samuel. They lose Brandon Ayuk. It's basically Brock Purdy versus the world in this game. And he did not hold up the standard. The Niners are going to continue to move down in my power rankings, man, just because there is this insane burden on Brock Purdy's shoulders. And look, man, I don't like taking this victory lap because I still don't think Brock Purdy gets enough credit for how good of a quarterback he is when all the pieces are there. But this is one of those games where you can really see this is a game where it's a prove-it game for Purdy. It is, all right, well, Brock, you don't have any of your weapons. You're going toe-to-toe with the best team in football. You got to show us in this game that you are an active elevator of an offense. Oh, my God, dude, it just got worse after, like, quicksand, man. It's just them melting down. I like Brock Purdy, man. I root for the kid. This is an ugly, ugly game. So many bad interceptions. 3 of them, count them in this game. And they showed this stat during the broadcast, and I think it shines a light on how Brock Purdy and this team win football games when they're at full strength. San Francisco, without a Brock Purdy turnover, are 16-0. San Francisco with a Brock Purdy turnover are 6-9. I mean, quite literally. And again, that's a blanket number. I get it. For a lot of teams, you can go when your offense doesn't turn the ball over. That's just a key. It's a tenet to winning football games. But when it's that big of a difference, Brock Purdy's job quite literally is just don't screw it up, man. We got all the weapons. We got the defense. We're going to keep you in close games. You just got to do enough. And this is when he does melt down, man. The worst one was the interception in the end zone. And I get it. It's tough. I'll cut him a little bit of slack because, like the one with Ronnie Bell, like you just see miscommunications with receivers, like guys not on the same page because they're not on the field.
Yeah.
But it's just disastrous play after disastrous play. And with Mahomes has the same thing working against him. They're down Pacheco. They're down Rashee Rice. They're down Juju Smith-Schuster. He's connecting with Noah Gray. Noah Gray's having a legacy game. Like, Brock Purdy's just not that guy, man. He's not the kind of top 10 elevator that people want to put him in these conversations. And I hate taking a victory lap on him because I do like Brock. And I think he is a good quarterback. I still believe that. But he's not an elevator. And he is still the big limiter of this team. You think back to the Super Bowl. I hate ragging on the guy. Overtime. Misses a throw that could have won them the game. That's the difference right there. And this one, it's the 3 interceptions. You just got to get more out of the guy, man. And he continues to be the big limiter of this team. Again, I know that they're going to look better. If McCaffrey comes back, at this point, I don't expect McCaffrey to play at all this season. I don't. When there's been this much controversy, this much drama with McCaffrey, I don't expect him to play. You are going to get Ayuk back. You'll get Debo back. You'll have him, Kittle. You'll have a good, potent combination. But at this point, with what we've seen out of Brock Purdy, with no Christian McCaffrey, with the slight regression, and I'll give credit, I think the defense has played better as the season has gone along, but I don't think they're as dominant as they were last year.
No.
And again, they may get Dre Greenlaw back or something like that, right? I don't view the Niners as I did last year, and I would definitively put the Vikings and I would put the Detroit Lions over them. Again, I think the Niners can go toe-to-toe with those teams, and I think they can look better. But with the play that we've gotten out of Brock Purdy and the dark cloud that is surrounding this team with Christian McCaffrey's injury, I wouldn't put them over either of those teams. And I'm not scared of the Niners the way I was last year, man. Like, I looked at the Niners as a powerhouse last year.
Yeah.
They're in a different tier to me this year, Carson. They're a step down from the dominant team that they were last year.
I agree completely. This is a bad loss for the Niners, and I think that I've defended them against some of the panic that was raining down upon them from a couple of their earlier losses, just because that game against the Rams was so weird. That felt like a freak loss. Game against the Cardinals, again, largely felt like a freak loss. Like, I get it. Those are games within your division to teams you're strongly favored against. You should win, but you're so shorthanded against the Rams. Like, there's just some freakish factors at play there. This game was different, though. They got manhandled in this game.
Real quick, the
biggest concern, as you mentioned, is Brock.
I just wanted to add, too, and what sucks about those 2 losses is that Brock actually played well in those 2 games.
Brock played phenomenally well against the Rams, but this is why we can't do the Purdy elite conversations, man. I mean, it's just remarkable to me how we go through this cycle. You talk about him maybe not getting enough credit. It just depends on who you're listening to. He's either not getting enough credit or he's getting far too much credit. And I think that the latter camp had really seized this moment this year, even as the Niners weren't winning a ton of games, to just say, look at what he's doing in this shorthanded offense, leading the leagues in passing yards per attempt, right? Producing like he was through the first handful of weeks. He's been hyped to hell this year, but where is he now? At the end of the day, he's given you 9 touchdowns, 7 picks. He has a passer rating of 91, and he cost them this game. It's just crazy to me. We were having this conversation last week about if Jaden Daniels is already a top 10 quarterback. The name that people seemed most upset that we put Jaden over or that we weren't really involving in the conversation was Brock Purdy. I don't know how you can compare the two when Jaden Daniels comes in and single-handedly makes an offense elite with just being this sort of ridiculous dual threat with his accuracy as a deep ball thrower. And Brock is still very much, to me, a product of the system. I think that he is a slightly above average starting quarterback. This game was really, really rough, though, man. I mean, that first pick was horribly underthrown into traffic, easily undercut. The second, you mentioned with Ronnie Bell, like, yeah, okay, we can say that's a miscommunication. It looked like Brock was throwing to an entirely different spot. It didn't look like it was that bad of an overthrow. Why wouldn't he expect Ronnie to come back, though? Like, that's how he's creating separation on that route. It's a miscommunication, sure, but I thought that Ronnie Bell was the one who made the correct decision there, and Brock just made a bad read, bad decision. So it's like, yeah, give him props for the game against the Rams. That was really impressive shorthanded. He's had a fine season, but overall, you just cannot ask him to carry the load that this offense is right now. And when you go down key guys, he doesn't belong in these conversations with any of the elite dudes who some people want to put him up against. You're just doing a disservice to him because that's not the standard that Brock Purdy should be measured against. Brock Purdy should be measured against, oh my God, what a miraculous story that this dude, Mr. Irrelevant, has made himself a solid NFL starting quarterback. When you try putting him up against a Joe Burrow, a Josh Allen I've seen, like, what are we doing? Like, obviously, that is not the case. The Niners would be the greatest offense of all time.
That's actually ridiculous, man. Dude.
It is ridiculous.
And also, these teams have played off against each other so much. You could tell that, like, these defenses were really well prepared for what other, the other teams were going to do on the offensive end. Mm-hmm. Like, when it's just an inevitability. Like, teams are ready for what the other unit's going to do. On the flip side of this coin, I mean, I didn't think Mahomes played an exceptionally dominant game, and they still end up doing enough. And that's the thing is, like, even Mahomes down key personnel as well just does enough. He gets the job done. He scrambles and makes plays with his legs. And again, more importantly, he just avoids making big key mistakes. And I know it's been the talking point about the Chiefs is that they're winning in different ways. The defense really is phenomenal, man. The rushing defense especially, just I'm so astounded is that every short yardage situation where it's 3rd and short or, it's 4th and short and you're going to go for it, I don't think that the opposing team is going to get it. Like, I am expecting the Chiefs front to just completely shut down everything. And I know the Vikings, I think statistically, the Vikings have the best rushing defense, if I'm not mistaken, still. They were the number 1 rushing defense, at least coming into this game against Detroit. I think Kansas City's is better, and it's a real weapon, man. Like, that's the strength of their football team right now, man. It's not Patrick Mahomes. And, like, Mahomes is statistically, that's the craziest part about this game to me, is we can have some big takeaways from the Niners, which we do, clearly. Patrick Mahomes is playing the worst football of his career, and the Chiefs are still undefeated. That's the craziest part about this game to me and the start of this season. Is right, last year, it was Chicken Little. It was the sky is falling, the world is ending, this is the apocalypse for the Chiefs. We are finally seeing the mighty Titan Thanos fall. And then against all odds, even with the worst offense we had seen of the Mahomes era, the worst season of the Mahomes era, the worst receiving group of the Mahomes era, they still persevere and they win the Super Bowl against all odds. And now this year, the receiving corps is more decimated. I still like their depth probably more. Not in this game, right? They go down Juju, so even that's evaporated. Mahomes is playing a horrible game. Mahomes plays the worst start to his season, and it doesn't matter. The Chiefs are rolling. Have the Chiefs, just considering the circumstances, Carson, I know you've been a little more skeptical than me about Kansas City. Considering how bad Mahomes has been, considering how bad the offense has played, like, are you moved? Are you even more terrified of the Chiefs this year?
Hold on. All right, I just want to be clear. If a little bit more skeptical than you as I had them at number 2 in my power rankings one week, then yes, I have.
I mean, they haven't moved. They've still been my number 1 since the Super Bowl.
Which is true, but I'm saying if that's the standard, the Chiefs, to me, remain the number 1 team in football. It's incredible. As you mentioned, Pat is playing the worst football of his life, and you're 6-0. Right? I had one brief moment where I was like, can they win the Super Bowl without Rashee Rice? Because the receiving core is looking dark. But I think that Juju, when he is out there and healthy, can replicate enough of that production with some of the depth additions where it's just like Pat can do enough for you offensively, but they're going to ride this defense, man. I mean, it's not even close which side of the ball is their strength. Nor was it last year, but I think the defense, remarkably, even losing L'Jarius Sneed, looks a little bit better out there this year. The run defense, as you mentioned, is insane situationally. Third down, fourth down, red zone, they're so good. And they're winning these games when Pat is just objectively not playing well. I mean, forget by his standards, dude. Statistically, he's not playing well by the standards of just an NFL starting quarterback. He's 14th in yards per attempt. He's tied for 21st in passing touchdowns. He's tied for the most interceptions thrown, and you're 6-0. And I get it. He's had some bad luck with the interceptions, right? You have a deflection at the line of scrimmage that turns into a pick in this past game. But overall, he looks a little bit less comfortable in the pocket. I don't know if I would say skittish, but maybe a little bit less assured than we're used to. And he's made some bad decisions with the football. And in spite of that, you're 6-0. You lose Juju in this game. Noah Gray is your number 1 target. You mentioned the Noah Gray legacy game. And you're 6-0. And you're not just 6-0. You're 6-0 with a couple of good wins, man. You beat Baltimore. You beat the Niners. You really haven't had a patsy game on the schedule up to this point. The defense is just unbelievable. And this offense is going to get better. No matter what you think, it's Patrick Mahomes at the end of the day. And you can go one of two ways in a situation like this. You can be skeptical of a team that is struggling, even though they're winning, right? And you can say, well, they're not winning these games convincingly. Eventually, their luck is going to run out. Or you can be impressed that they're winning while they're struggling. And with the Kansas City Chiefs, I'll go with the latter every day of the week, right? We saw the Eagles last year. They got out to their dominant start in terms of record, but they weren't dominating anybody. And that defense was struggling. And eventually, things fell off. And we shouldn't have been shocked by that because they had shown so many cracks in their armor already. But you mentioned Kansas City last year, right? Really underwhelming regular season. And then they still go out and they win the Super Bowl. As long as they have that defensive foundation and they have Patrick Mahomes and they have Travis Kelce and they have Andy Reid, it's hard to pick against them. I don't think they're invulnerable. I don't think there's some juggernaut this year because, again, that offense, I mean, it's a pretty average offense right now. But I'm certainly not going to discount the fact that they deserve to remain the Super Bowl favorite. There are several teams with more explosive offensive ceilings that I think can get them. Absolutely. I think Baltimore can get them. I think Buffalo can get them. But, man, the way that they can just control a football game is outstanding.
It really is. The defense is sound situationally. I legitimately think Kareem Hunt was an awesome addition for them in the absence of Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah, Carson Steele, Gator Boy, wasn't ready to be an RB1 in the NFL with his 5'2", 40.
Not at all, man.
No disrespect.
I mean, not being slow, not being able to hold on to the rock. Now, I don't think it's going to be I don't even think we saw this last year. I was going to say, I don't think it's going to be like them breaking through a dam. I don't think we're going to have this kind of light bulb eureka moment for the offense. I don't ever think the lights are going to come on, right? I don't think this is an offense that is just going to magically kick into gear. I think they've shown us enough football over these past 2 seasons. That's not this team's identity. But again,
yeah.
I want you to think about NFL dynasties. Think about all of the great NFL dynasties. The 70s Steelers, the 90s Cowboys, all of the Patriots teams that won the Super Bowl. The Patriots teams that won the Super Bowl weren't the explosive offenses with Tom Brady and Randy Moss. They never got a chip. All of the great dynasties in football have been built upon a foundation of a phenomenal all-time defense, of a really great running game, and an all-time QB that can do enough, right? All of those teams.
Well, let's not call Troy Aikman an all-time QB.
Well, fair. The Cowboys are probably the Cowboys are the one anomaly. But even this is a little more, but again, even with this Chiefs team, right, it's a little more reminiscent of that. It's a handicapped passing attack with a really good running game and an elite defense. But in the Niners, right, the Niners are probably the other great dynasty that we can look at too. And they're a little bit more of an anomaly because that was in a passing attack, right? West Coast offense, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice. They're not a pound the ball between the tackles kind of team, but they could run the ball and they had a great defense. Like, it's just a great formula, man. Great defense, smart quarterback, and that is the one area where I will give Mahomes credit. I've been disappointed by his play. And the final thing I want to say about the Chiefs offense, too, along with that, I'll get back to Mahomes here in a second. The one area that I continue to be befuddled by, Carson, we bring this up, it seems like every time we talk about the Chiefs, and that's just them getting way too cute. The Carson Wentz goal line formation, like I'm pretty sure they came away with it. They came away with a TD on that drive, correct?
On that drive, yeah, they got stopped on the one. They brought him out just to hand the ball off.
But like that, there's another play in this game earlier where
the fake punt was far more egregious.
Gosh.
4th and 1. If you have Patrick Mahomes and you're going to go for it, put the ball in his hands. Have him on the field, right? When you have these elite superstar quarterbacks, it doesn't make sense if you're in a 4th and short situation to try to pull off a fake punt.
Early in the game, too. And, the Lions.
I'm okay with them going for it. I'm okay with it. Just have your offense on the field.
And the Lions do the exact same thing. It doesn't come back to bite them in the ass. They do that on the first drive against the Vikings. They go for it.
Yeah, well, that made less sense because that was 4th and 7.
Yeah.
If you're going to go for it on 4th and 7, you might as well run a fake punt and just see if you can use the element of surprise. And they also don't have Patrick Mahomes.
I just disagree. I in my opinion, dude, I think any scenario where it's a 4th, man, screw the element of surprise. I'm just going to put my offense out there and we're going to try to pick it up. My offense is better than your That's how I feel philosophically about those situations.
I don't know, though. The Lions have had some success with the fake punts. And if you know it's a passing down, I can see the justification for that. But I just wouldn't have gone for it. They just didn't need to inside their own 40 on the first drive of the game.
100%. But the one thing I will give Pat credit for on a broader scale here is Brady mentioned this during the broadcast, and I do agree with him. Mahomes, I've been disappointed with his play, with how reckless he's been at times, with his inaccuracies, with him putting the ball uncharacteristically in harm's way. He plays the game really smart, though, man. Like, Mahomes, situationally, is still one of the most sound quarterbacks in football. The numbers aren't going to reflect that, but Mahomes, situationally, is still a really solid quarterback. And
of course. He's Patrick Mahomes, dude. He's QB1 until 100%. It is decisively proven otherwise. I'm glad that we're not doing a sky is falling, Mahomes is falling off a cliff thing, because I don't think that would make sense, right? I wouldn't want to overreact to this small of a sample size, 6 weeks, and say that. I do think it's crazy, though, to imagine if any other elite quarterback were to have a stretch like this, right? If Josh had a stretch like this.
If Josh had like this, he's not top 10. He's not top 15.
Literally. No, literally. Because he can have one bad week and that becomes the discourse. And again, I think Pat's the greatest quarterback talent we've ever seen play the position. He shouldn't be subjected to that, but neither should a Josh Allen, neither should a Lamar, who, by the way, have never had a stat line like this after 6 weeks where you're 6 touchdowns to 8 picks and just putting forth mediocre offense like this. But I'm not worried about Patrick Mahomes. I want to be very, very clear about that. I am a little worried about the Niners, though. We talk about Brock having to carry too heavy a load. They're 27th in red zone efficiency. This feels like the story every single week. They were the number 1 red zone offense last year. They've consistently left points on the board. They take a field goal today. Brock throws a pick to end this game when it was basically over already. But he threw another pick. The pick where he's targeting Ronnie Bell was right outside the red zone. Like, they're not finishing drives. I thought their defense played solidly, but I do think they're pretty average overall. It's not last year's group, and the injuries just need to stop, right? We don't know how long Ayuk is going to be out. They fear an ACL injury, they've said. Debo very well could continue to be banged up. CMC, we don't know if he's coming back. And if you are down a couple of those key weapons, like this offensive formula just isn't the same. And I give credit to Jordan Mason for what he's done as a runner of the football. He just cannot come close to replicating what CMC brings you as a pass catcher. I think that's really the key element, the key dimension to this offense. We see things like Purdy's time to throw skyrocketing, right? I think part of that is he doesn't have his most reliable check down option in Christian McCaffrey, who is so great at just catching those short passes and making a play out of the backfield. I still think they're going to make the playoffs, but I am now worried. I said a couple weeks ago that I wasn't too worried about the Niners, and at this point, I am. There are a few teams in the NFC that I think are concretely above them, just much better, and that's super disappointing if you're San Francisco. Shall we talk about your Steelers, Logan, who played on Sunday Night Football against the New York Jets? What'd you take away from that one? Big win for Pittsburgh and, of course, Davante Adams' debut, which perhaps did not have the impact that Jets fans would have hoped.
Yeah, you want to start Jets, Steelers? What are you feeling, man?
What calls out to you, man?
All right, we'll start positive.
Who do you think it said more about? We'll play that classic game. Who was this game more about?
You know what? I think it did say more about the Steelers, and one on the theme of organizational dysfunction. This is what happens. This is a dysfunctional organization playing a organization with great framework. Like, just in terms of what the result happened, like, this is a well-coached team that knows their responsibilities and knows their jobs. We'll get to Russ here in a second, but I just want to give this team credit. This is the best Steelers team in some time. We always talk about the elite front, and I've been talking about this all year long, about how excited I was for this season with the additions that we've made, but I really think you've seen it manifest itself into results. Like, the Steelers are 5-2 right now. I was high on the Steelers coming into this year, even I picked us to lose this game. I texted all of my friends coming into this game. Shout out, my boy Angelo was at this game. Donald Trump, for some reason, was at this football game. I don't know why, man.
And he actually plays for the Steelers now.
Suited up.
He's actually wearing number 47 for the Steelers.
Yeah, we took his big 6'5" ass. We put him on the O-line, man. We got some push-up front, too.
Yeah, it's the right spot to put him.
But this is the best Steelers team in some time. We always talk about the elite front. TJ Watt wasn't a non-factor in this game, but you see all the attention he gets from the Jets. They were double-teaming him basically on every play. And the one time he wasn't double-teamed, he got in the backfield. But we always talk about the front. Watt, Hayward, Alex Highsmith, Ogunjobi, Keanu Benton. All those guys deserve credit. But the linebacking core is so much better this year. Patrick Queen is a monster. Landon Roberts has been a phenomenal run defender this season. Peyton Wilson has such great speed and just straight line speed attacking for a linebacker. The depth is better, but the top end talent is better. But this is also the best secondary of this era. The secondary and the linebacking group was the biggest issue for this team over the past few years. Joey Porter Jr. is a star shutdown corner. The guy can take on the number one responsibility of whoever week in, week out, and I'm confident in him limiting them. Deshaun Elliott is the best safety that we've ever had alongside Minkah Fitzpatrick. The guy flies around the field. He currently leads the Steelers in tackles. The guy's a playmaker, blowing up runs, making plays in the backfield on quarterbacks. He's just a playmaker. Beanie Bishop has 2 interceptions against Aaron Rodgers in this game, and I will say, I don't want to inflate Beanie Bishop's value after this game. He's good for a rookie, and I want to give him that credit. Some of his interceptions are circumstantial in this one, like Garrett Wilson just drops an interception that he gets.
First one was a hell of a play, though, bro.
First one was a play.
Flip his hips and just stick one hand out there. I mean, Garrett Wilson was open on that play.
Did Beanie have? I don't think it was Beanie that had the interception against Bo Nix against the Broncos. I don't think that was Beanie. I think that was Dante Jackson. But Beanie's had a few bad games on tape, but he looks like he's more comfortable, and he is far along for a rookie. And that first interception, oh my goodness, that was really difficult. But still, for a rookie cornerback as our 4th guy, great. And he had to step up in a big way today. Dante Jackson was out of this game. I like Dante Jackson a lot. He had to step up. Beanie did his job. So this defense as a whole, Mike Tomlin's defenses are always really talented. They're always really well coached. This is the best defense of the TJ Watt era. I'm ready to stamp that. It's confirmed. And I also want to give credit. I was really impressed with his patchwork offensive line. Mason McCormick has been playing really well. He's a rookie that has had to step in. The Steelers' offensive line has been ravaged by injuries this year. Broderick Jones has been playing. We are down Fontenot. We are down Isaac Sumalo. We are down James Daniels. And we are down Zach Frazier. The entire offensive line is banged up. And I just want to give credit to the interior guys. Ryan McCollum, Mason McCormick played great games against the Jets. But I am burying the lead a little bit here. Russell Wilson comes in. and adds just a new dynamic to this offense that we have not seen in quite some time. Carson, he had me giddy. He had me giddy, man. He had me fired up. I'm sitting there doing dances in my living room, man. I was fired up by Russell Wilson.
Kicking your legs. He had you sitting on the edge of the bed kicking your legs.
Dude, I was listening to Claro,
giggling.
man. I had the white girl anthems on, dude.
That's just ball knowledge.
I was feeling myself sensually. I was aroused. I was aroused, to be quite frank with you, Carson.
This took quite a turn, yeah.
Russ had me feeling some type of way, dude. I mean,
oh yeah.
The one key thing I think Russ has to keep doing, because he is so physically limited at this point in his career, he's got to keep getting the ball out fast. I give credit to the Steelers' offensive line. There is no time. And if Russ keeps doing that, I'm okay with him being in the pocket. He throws a pretty damn deep ball, man. And I think, a friend of the show, I think Gabe Swartz asked the key question about if Russ should continue starting. If Russ unlocks elite George Pickens, I think that completely warrants playing Russell Wilson, because it adds a new dynamic that will open up so much more for this Steelers offense. That vertical passing attack going downfield, it's just going to stretch the defense more, where when they're calling plays at the line of scrimmage, they're going to have to divert more attention to the back end of the defense. Because what did the Jets do in this game, Carson? They were fine with putting one corner, one defensive back on George Pickens, and Russ made him pay for that. Russ is throwing these moon balls up to GP. I've been saying it for 2 years now. George Pickens is one of the most physically gifted wide receivers in football. On 50-50 balls with his hands, he's an elite one-on-one receiver, and Russ is willing to throw those balls. I think Russ has more confidence to throw those passes. I also think Russ just has better touch on those passes. It just unlocks a new dimension of the Steelers' offense that has not existed for some time. We got a glimpse of it last year with Mason Rudolph, who, to be clear, is not a good quarterback. I've been going to bat for Mason. We'll talk about him in a minute here. But even 3 games of Mason Rudolph being willing to throw 3 or 4 deep balls a game to George Pickens, it unlocked something brand new. And think about the collateral effects of Russ going deep. It opens up the box where Najee and Jalen Warren can have wide open running lanes. You just have a more balanced passing attack that could make the Steelers close to an average offense. And again, I'll say this again. I said it, and I was wrong, right? I thought that Russ was washed. I didn't think the Steelers had a prayer at winning this football game with Russ under center. I think the Steelers can win regular season football games with either of these quarterbacks. I still think both of these quarterbacks are too flawed to win playoff games. And you know what? Mike Tomlin, Russ, if y'all want to prove me wrong like y'all proved me wrong in this Sunday night football game, by all means, I will be a very happy Steelers fan. Like Mike said last year, I'll be fat, sassy, and content, man. I'll be sitting here, like a house cat. If you want to prove me wrong, I'll be happy. I still think they're too flawed to win playoff games. But if Russ can open this vertical passing attack, and more importantly, if he can get the ball to George Pickens, his name is George, the G stands for get him the ball. If he can get him the football, play Russ. That has been the key dynamic of this football team that I've been preaching for a season now. You see it when the guy had 1,000 yards on like 50 catches last year. George Pickens is a freak, man, and if Russ is the guy that is going to get the ball to George Pickens, by all means, play him. I don't know, man. I haven't been this happy or this enthusiastic in some time now with this Steelers offense. And look, man, I still don't look at them as this upper echelon attack, but if he is willing to throw those 50-50 balls, he clearly has a better chemistry with George Pickens. That does, to me, it tips the scales in Russell Wilson's favor. I think the vertical passing attack outweighs Justin Fields' physical and athletic abilities, Russ's ability to throw that deep ball. It's still close between these two guys. And again, I think the Steelers can win games with either quarterback. I think the team is that good. But if Russ is going to continue unlocking that vertical passing attack, I think it's more worthwhile playing him than playing Justin Fields.
I don't know if I can speak confidently on that yet. I would like to see a little bit more from Russ. Now, I do think you mentioned the key aspect, right? The vertical passing game, the deep balls. I mean, just the touch there is really, really nice still. I did think there were a couple of throws from Russ
For sure.
Receivers just made plays on, right? I mean, he had Pickens deep, and threw a ball that hit the Jets DB square on his back, bounced up. Somehow Pickens maintained his focus to make a play there. He had another throw to Freiermuth, which wasn't underthrown. He put it in the right spot if he was going to miss, but it was a nice ball. It was also an incredible catch. And at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, you have a few of those nice vertical chunk plays, which you're right, you didn't really have under Fields. But also, Fields did hit a couple of those.
They got called back for sure.
Yeah, I feel like the Pickens not getting the ball enough, Pickens not being utilized enough thing, that wasn't a Justin Fields issue to me. Like, no, he's not the pure passer of the football that Russ is, but it's Tomlin and it's Pickens, right? I mean, when George Pickens isn't even running his routes with efforts against the Cowboys, it's like, well, you're in a dilemma there. Do you keep him on the field when he's behaving like a child and when he's actually not putting himself in a position to make impactful plays? I do think that Russ is a better pure passer, but I still have my questions. For example, he didn't really complete a single ball over the middle of the field today. I mean, damn near everything was outside the numbers, or it was just short passing game, but still nothing over the middle of the field, which we know has been a big issue for him in recent years, especially. Time to throw has been the thing with Russ, right? Where he's still holding onto the ball for 3+ seconds, but we know he's just not the level of athlete to be able to make the magic happen that he used to. And so that oftentimes results in negative plays for the offense. I just think that Fields had done a nice job of stabilizing this group, and I do think he's the superior athlete, and I think he was doing enough as a passer to have justified keeping his job. Obviously, this is a really good game from Russell Wilson, but do I think that it was worth making the swap, right? Sort of just throwing that wrinkle in a season that was going pretty well? I don't know yet. I'm not saying that Russ can't do it, but with what we've seen over the last couple years, this one game wasn't enough for me to just say, okay, yeah, Russ is back. Because, again, like there's still a couple of major concerns that he hasn't addressed.
I definitely need to see more before I'm meaningfully moved. But I do think there are some things that Fields can adopt that Russ was doing. Again, I think Russ has supreme touch on his ball. I think Fields' arm is liver.
Absolutely.
I think he's a better athlete. That being said, there is just this willingness with Russ. It's a double-edged sword, right? I think he's a little more willing to put the ball in harm's way, but with that, I also think he's more willing to throw the ball up to his playmakers and say, hey, go make a play. Like, Fields just wasn't throwing these balls to George Pickens. Fields wasn't attempting these passes to Freiermuth. And again, I do wonder if that vertical component just changes the defensive scheme that we're running up against, right? Because when you have a rushing quarterback like Fields, you're just going to put more in the box, which is going to limit your rushing attack a little more because they're trying to play against Fields. I also think, and this is a huge component, I think the reason that Tomlin did this, I think the Steelers want to keep their draft pick. I think that had a huge part. If Fields plays over X amount of snaps, I think it's like 50 or 51% of snaps, the Steelers' 6th-round pick that they shipped to Chicago is going to turn into a 4th-round pick. And so I think a big part of this is Tomlin saying, well, I think this team is good enough to win with any quarterback under center. And so if we can play Russ the rest of the year and he can stay healthy and win us football games and the change doesn't dramatically change our floor or our ceiling, it's worth it to keep the 4th-round pick instead of sending a 6th-round pick. So I do think that is a big component of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think Tomlin was a little bit vindicated with this decision. This was a ballsy decision from Mike Tomlin because if it didn't work out, he is getting flambéed by the media today for a bad decision and tanking a team that was really going well. But I do agree with you fundamentally. I am not dramatically moved about who Russell Wilson is as a quarterback at this point in his career. I still think he's a bit of a statue in the pocket. Yeah. I still think he's limited athletically. I still don't think his arm is as live as it once was. He's still a limited quarterback, but I do think he can win football games for this team. And if he is going to unlock George Pickens, I think that outweighs what Justin Fields can do athletically. Although, again, I do think Fields is playing really great football. I think they can win with either of these guys, but again, man, if Russ is going to get the ball to GP, man, I think that makes the difference. I really do. Also, the last thing I want to mention on this game, bullshit-ass call on the referees. Screw you guys for that blocked extra point. It doesn't come back to bite the Steelers in this game. That was a horrible call on Minka. I don't know why you guys have, like, can we find refs? Can we find, please? That's one of the worst calls I ever saw, man. And God bless the Steelers because they end up, I think it's Alualu. I think Alualu ends up blocking a field goal later in this game on Greg Zuerlein. Yeah,
there were a few hands up.
Danny Smith is the GOAT. I don't think he could fit more gum in his mouth if he tried, man.
It fires me up, dude, when he just gets all pumped up.
Dude, he's the GOAT.
The other
he's
week,
the GOAT.
I can't remember. I think it was the Cowboys game. I just saw him very clearly say, like, motherfucker. Like, just you could read his lips and he very clearly said it. And I said, you know what, Gramps, that fires me up. Yeah, I mean, the special teams stuff is unbelievable. He's an old guy. Let's be real. He looks like he's about 90 years old out there. It's incredible what they can do defensively and what they can do on special teams. Last thing I will say, just to be a little bit more of a skeptic with the Russ stuff. Jets defense, I have a lot of respect for it. Secondary is decimated in this game.
I mean, they're down, what, 3 corners?
No Tony Adams. Down 2 corners in their top 3 safeties because Ashton Davis, Cal Bears legend, gets hurt in this game. Chuck Clark is out for this game. DJ Reed is out for this game. Like, it's just brutal. Just absolutely brutal. So that is one last aspect here. I'm not ruling out that Russ can be better for this team. I think that he and Fields are honestly on pretty similar levels as starters. You mentioned the draft pick. Like, we'll see. That can be a tiebreaker. I don't think that should be a motivating factor when your goal is to make the playoffs. Like, this is the best Steelers team that we've seen since Big Ben retired. Like you mentioned, it's the best defense, and it is also clearly the best offense. Like, this is a legitimately good football team. I think it would be hard for them to win a playoff game because I still think the offense is limited. But they're good, man. I mean, they deserve to be 5-2 right now. On the flip side of that, Logan, the New York Jets are 2-5. What do you have to say about this performance from them?
Yeah, man. There's no other major changes to explore, man. I just think it's funny. They fire Saleh. They trade for Adams. Look, dude, the vice is going to get tighter and tighter and tighter every week, man. It's like a straitjacket, right? 2 weeks ago, they lost their most important game of the season against the Buffalo Bills, division rival, right? You got to make up footing in the AFC East. You have to win that game if you want to have a chance at winning the division. Well, you lost that game. Now, the goalposts shift. The most important game of the season is now against Pittsburgh because they're a fellow wild card contender. It'll give you potentially a leg up over them if they don't win their division, which will probably not. I would still probably take Baltimore to win it, but it is going to come down to the wire. It's going to come down to the Steelers' divisional games. But this is now their most important game of the season, and they lose it. There's nothing else to do, man. You know, this is your team. Yeah, you got to figure it out. Like, Davante Adams clearly helps Aaron Rodgers. Some fun facts here for you. They have the 8th most touchdowns between a duo in NFL history. They have the most yards, TDs, and completions of any QB wideout duo from 2016 to 2021. As my friend Mark said during the game yesterday, he's 99% sure Adams and Rodgers slept in the same bed last night. They've got great chemistry on and off the field.
Absolutely. When they were doing the little graphics show where they had the stat about how many touchdowns they had together, it's like the second duo with 50 touchdowns with one team to then reconnect with another, and they have them riding on a tandem bicycle, and then the transition is like a bunch of hearts swirling. I mean, let's just face it, they're two men that are in love, and that's a beautiful thing.
Clearly,
it's a beautiful thing.
I'm happy for them. In the Big Apple, man, you couldn't ask for a better situation.
Unfortunately, I know, beautiful place to take a ride on a tandem bicycle. Unfortunately, it didn't lead to a win.
It didn't. And that's the funny thing, man. Like, you know what? The Jets are moving up in my power rankings. Like, they were, before this week, the Steelers and the Jets, honestly, because even I, as a delusional Steelers fan, I was somehow too low on the Steelers. I was too low on the Jets. Actually, no, I wasn't. I'm not going to do that to myself. After they made the Adams trade, they have moved up. Right, they have gone from the 19th, 18th team in my power rankings to about the 13th or 14th, right? They're still not great. They're still like a...
That might even be generous.
Yeah, maybe. They have improved to a playoff contender. I think they're a little harder to game plan for because they have this much talent. And I do think that Adams, just in the aggregate, is going to create problems on the back end. Garrett Wilson, this is the most wide open he's ever been. right? He had way more single coverage than he's had all season. But this was a bad Garrett Wilson game. I mean, that interception swung the tide of this game, completely slammed the door on the Jets. And I think he was scared. I think Wilson's going up for that ball, and he takes his eyes off at the last minute because he's preparing to get licked by Peasy Jr., just doesn't bring it in. Ball bounces out his chest.
I think also, I mean, there was a hand in his eye line for a second, right? They were talking about if the ball was deflected. I don't think the ball was tipped. It could have been. I don't think it was. I didn't see a change in direction, or did I see actual contact with the fingertips on the angles? But
that's a great point.
I guess just having a hand, in his face for a second, I think made that catch a little tougher.
No, I mean, it does. When you're trying to catch a pass.
But it's still terrible. It's a terrible mistake.
You got to make it. As highly touted as he is and how, widely considered he is to be as a great receiver, you have to make that play. And so I do think it's going to help Wilson get more open. I think maybe this will lead to some lighter boxes down the rest of the season for Breece Hall. Like, when you get more talented, it just is going to help your team. But there are still two major issues with this offense, because I also think the defense is going to bounce back. You mentioned all the myriad of injuries. The two big issues with this team is still the offensive line. Got eaten alive by the Steelers' defensive line in this game. Can't run the ball. And Aaron Rodgers is a problem. Like, I've just not been impressed with Aaron Rodgers this season. And I think some of the numbers are misleading. Like, when you're going to look at the interception totals for Rodgers, some of them just aren't his fault. Like, they aren't. But he has objectively played poorly. Like, he is not elevating this offense in a way that he can. And I just don't think he can at this point in his career. I think Aaron Rodgers had to be in a better offensive situation if you wanted him to win you a Super Bowl. I think that's just, the expectation was that he was going to come in here and be this team's savior. And he's too limited athletically. He's lost too much from where he was at his apex. Like, I thought when the Jets came in this year, Carson, that he was going to be able to play above game manager football, and they were going to be able to win football games. I think you need MVP Rodgers. That guy doesn't exist anymore. And
nope.
That's where I'm at. I wouldn't pick this team to win a playoff game. Maybe they'll make the playoffs. They got to tighten up, man.
Yeah.
Every single week gets more and more important, and the margin for error is just so slim. This team is 2-5. They're going to have to damn near win out to make they have basically 2 losses that they can afford themselves the rest of the way, which means they need to go 8-2 to maybe make the playoffs. Like,
I don't know if I agree with that. I think they can lose 3 games. I think 9-8 can get you into the playoffs in the AFC this year. That wild card race sucks. Bro.
It does
suck. The Colts are the last wild card team right now. Or I guess the Chargers are, because they haven't played their Week 7 game.
I just think with how poorly Rodgers has played, how poorly this offensive line has played, how limited this offense is, there's just not a lot of room for error. So I probably agree with you. I think they could maybe win. But that's the margin. You've already blown 5 games this year. You have 2 to 3 games to lose the rest of the way, or your goose is cooked. And I've been really underwhelmed by the Jets, man. That vice gets tighter and tighter every single week.
They're just not very good, dude. And I like the Davante trade because I thought, okay, listen, whether you like it or not, you're kind of all in on this group. And so you might as well pull the last rabbit out of your hat and see if you can make something happen. But at the same time, although I said, yeah, this will help their passing attack, it'll help their offense, it doesn't fix the fact that the line has been brutal, that their run game is one of the worst in football, right? I mean, they are 31st in rushing yards, 29th in rushing yards per attempt, and that Aaron Rodgers is just playing like an average starting quarterback. All of those things ultimately put a very hard ceiling on this team that a Davante Adams addition couldn't fix. I did say I still really think this team can make the playoffs because their schedule is light down the stretch and because the AFC sucks. And as crazy as it sounds, Logan, even as they lost their new biggest game of the year, as you mentioned, after losing their previous biggest game of the year to the Bills, I still do think there's a chance. The Bengals, right, are now 3-4. They have a game up on them. That's a really good offense, but that defense sucks. We know that defense sucks. Like, there's a real opportunity for New York because there's only a couple of legitimately tough games left on their schedule. Bills, Texans. Outside of that, there's a lot of really winnable games. They're just not very good, though, and they're not going to get much better. We'll see if Davante can have a more pronounced impact going forward, right, as he continues to learn this offense. He has the relationship with Rodgers already, but nevertheless, he's being inserted into a new offense. But it wasn't close to enough in this one. And it's just embarrassing the way that they're losing some of these games. I mean, the Broncos loss is brutal. The Bills game was just ugly on both sides, but some of the self-inflicted wounds in that game. And this one, it's like you're up 15-6, you're driving. There's no reason for the Pittsburgh Steelers to touch the ball at the end of the half. You should be up 2 scores, at least 12 points probably at the end of the half. And Rodgers throws a pick. Now, I will say it was a hell of a play by Beanie Bishop. It was. You still can't afford to throw a pick there. That's what's tough about this Rodgers thing, because obviously everybody is looking at him, and they are saying, you are the problem here. And if you are defending him, it's almost like you're missing the point because he hasn't been good enough, clearly, right? He's not the difference maker they hoped he would be. At the same time, do I look at this offense and think, Aaron Rodgers, you are the problem? No. I don't. I mean, this game, right, he throws 2 picks. One of them is completely on Garrett Wilson. He's not doing enough, but that's the reality of having a 40-year-old quarterback who's in a bad offensive situation. The receiving core is good, but the run game is so bad, the line is so bad, he just can't move. He can't extend plays like you would need him to succeed in this offensive situation. So their fate is pretty clear. Like, yeah, they can win games. They're going to be okay. They're just a very average, mediocre football team. And if they do make the playoffs, it'll be as a 9-8, 6 or 7 seed who's just there because they had a light schedule down the stretch, and everybody else in the AFC wildcard race outside of the Steelers sucks too. And that's not what the goal was. The goal was to win Super Bowl. The goal was to contend for Super Bowls. There's no path to that in the Aaron Rodgers era.
I completely agree. And I don't know if Woody Johnson realizes that, man. I think Woody needs to take a step back. I still think Saleh was the wrong call, like firing him.
Agreed.
Last 2 things I want to mention on this game. I do think this is the most embarrassing loss for them. You allowed 37 points to the Steelers. In my wildest fantasies, in my wildest dreams as a Steelers fan.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, my over-under for, like, Steelers points in this game would have been, like, 19.5. If we had scored 20 points, I would have been like, booyah! Great game. That's where I'm at. That's the bar. And you let up 37 points. That's abysmal. Also, I think they have to let go of Greg Zuerlein, like, at this point, right? Like, I get that he has
he sucks.
a blocked field goal and a blocked extra point. He has the lowest.
Should have just already let him go. He was terrible.
He has the lowest field goal percentage in the NFL. He missed a bunch of bad kicks last week. He missed the game winner against Denver. Like, what do we? That's, I guess, your final move. Woody, send him in. Like, cut the bald guy. Let him go. Put him out to pasture, man. Find a different one.
Yeah, find a different bald guy somewhere else. I agree. The stat that's been making the rounds is that last year, after 7 weeks, with Zach Wilson at quarterback, the Jets were 2-5. This year, they're 2-5. They have 2 more total points scored through 7 games. Just a brutal, brutal spot to be in. And, like, listen, there was no delusion here about what the Davante trade would do for them, right? It wasn't going to save their season in terms of living up to preseason expectations. Could it save their season so they sneak into the playoffs? Maybe still, but there's just something dysfunctional and cursed about this organization. It would be hilarious. I want to see them bring in Randall Cobb. And I want to see them bring in Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And then we can just have Aaron Rodgers and the 2020 Green Bay Packers having a good old time. Plus
Don't they have Randall Cobb?
And at that point, it's just a social experiment. They had him last year. He is now unsigned because he sucks and he's old and he doesn't belong on a football team. But Aaron Rodgers should bring him back. Because at that point, we can just lean into the social experiment. What happens when you let an ayahuasca-loving, insane 40-year-old man, single, no attachments, just have the run of an entire football team? Me personally, I'm fascinated. We're getting close. We might as well just lean into the skid on that. The roller coaster of an NFL season is moving right along, and it promises to be a month full of tricks, treats, and of course, touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is the #1 place to bet touchdowns.
Running it in from the 1 or an 80-yard bomb, we don't care how they score touchdowns. We want to bet on them. DraftKings heard us and is delivering. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple, like a player to score a touchdown. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick.
Here's a reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance of their own. Bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Logan, though, Aaron Rodgers' old team, the Green Bay Packers, picked up a big win yesterday. They beat the Houston Texans. What'd you take away from that win for Green Bay?
I think Green Bay is the team that I thought they were, man. I was really impressed, especially just with the defense. I mean, they completely muzzled C.J. Stroud, 10 of 21, 86 yards. I get that you're down Nico Collins, but, I consider this receiving group to be like the deepest in the NFL, right? With Tank Dell, with Dalton Schultz, with Stephon Diggs now. Like, I didn't think they were going to miss a beat. And the best offensive player for the Texans is Joe Mixon. Got me feeling nicey, man. Shout out Joe Mixon. But the defense really impressed me. And this is a very strange ending to this football game. I do want to be a little critical of Houston here at the end of this game. I get that CJ wasn't having a great game. It felt like they were playing for the field goal a little bit, man. They run the ball inside the 2-minute warning twice, and I get that you're trying to maybe get the Packers to burn a few timeouts, but yeah, the Packers gift them this final possession. You have a Romeo Doubs penalty that sets them back majorly. Love gets sacked. And the Texans should be in the driver's seat the rest of the way, right? Like, you get a couple of first downs, you milk the clock all the way down, and you win the game with basically no time on the clock. They kick a field goal, they go up 1 point, and basically just gift the Packers a 2-minute drive here. Get into field goal range and win this one. I thought the Texans could have managed this one a little better. I wouldn't have liked giving Jordan Love the football back with under 2 minutes left. So I thought they could have managed this game a little bit better, but the reason that I bought into the Packers is what shined through in this game. The defense is very young and very talented, and this secondary played a phenomenal football game. But, dude, Jordan Love is just going to sling that thing, dude. Jordan Love is a madman, Carson. He is an old-school, classic gunslinger. Like, I said it a couple weeks ago, but I said he's more Favre than Rodgers. Yep. Holy hell, dude. It warrants him taking those opportunities, I think. They are such an explosive offense. And, don't get me wrong. I was telling Mark when we were watching the games, I said, dude, Jordan Love is going to give the ball away 2 to 3 times a game, but he is also going to hit on some massive shot plays that swing it. If it's Wicks, if it's Dobbs, if it's Tucker Kraft, if it's Luke Musgrave, if it's Christian Watson, it almost doesn't matter, man. Rodgers wishes he could be Jordan Love at this point in his career.
He wishes.
Love is going to sling that thing, man. You live by the gunslinger, you die by the gunslinger. Jordan Love is a wild man, and I love it. But that volatility, man, it's something that certain offenses don't have. I'll use the Titans as an example, right? Mason Rudolph is a game manager all the way. That team is not going to take shots. Mm-hmm. But that's a reason that I like Green Bay, man. I like the fact that Jordan Love is going to air that thing out, that he is going to hit on big shot plays that swing the game, and he does every week. Again, it may cost you. Think back to the playoffs last year. Jordan Love, final play of the game, throws an interception that ends their season, and it's a bad play. But he's also going to connect on some big ones, man. The Green Bay Packers are a really good football team. And I'm debating. The team that I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to put them over is San Francisco, and I'm very close with them in San Francisco, man. I think I do. I'm going to look at my power rankings here in a minute, but I think I do have Green Bay over San Francisco. They're a great football team, man, and they got a good recipe. Well-coached, youthful, great defense, and they have got an explosive offense, man. And I don't think the Texans are far off, but I was really disappointed with CJ today, man. I think the Texans and Packers are close, but
very.
God, Jordan Love is a cowboy, man.
He is, dude. He will attempt any throw. I mean, I said last week he's thrown more balls off his back foot than I've seen any quarterback ever. But
he's audacious, man. He's audacious.
He is. He is one audacious son of a gun, dude. And he throws lasers. I mean, the first touchdown pass up the seam right as the safety was closing in, that is just a dart. He's a genuine elevator. And even though he does make mistakes, right? I mean, he's played 5 games. He's got 15 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. That is just ridiculous volume of both incredible elevating plays and mistakes to have through 5 games. I think that he's cemented the dude that he showed himself to be at the home stretch of last year. And it's like, yeah, he wasn't turning the ball over in those last 8 weeks or whatever when his stats were just ridiculous. But I think that you live and you die with that, as you say, and you're happy to do so. This Green Bay offense is explosive. Their play calling is great. Their receiving core is so deep. They run the ball so well. They're second in terms of 20-plus yard passing plays this year. That's where you feel the explosiveness. I love that about this offense, and I love this offense, period, point blank. But, like, yeah, he makes a couple bad decisions. I mean, his first pick was bad. His second pick totally forced a ball into double coverage, airmailed it, throwing it off his back foot a little bit. But overall, I think that this offense is awesome, and I was really impressed by their defense. That's been the thing where I've been skeptical. I haven't had questions about the Green Bay offense, really. I mean, there was a moment where I was like, okay, we need to see Love take a little bit better care of the football, but I thought this was a pretty mediocre, below average even defense. They played really well today, man. They got pressure on CJ Stroud. They covered well. There was just nothing there for him a lot. So, like, yes, CJ has to be better, but this was a really tough circumstance for him, I think. There's an interesting contrast between these two because CJ is already like the consummate professional, take care of the football. Yes, he makes some outstanding plays and he can extend plays, but like just nails on third down, never going to lose you a game. Whereas Love is just run around, sometimes like a wild man, launch the ball 40 yards downfield, forget the window, forget where your feet are, forget if your feet are set. And they're both awesome in their own ways. But this is just a cool matchup because of the contrast between these two quarterbacks who are both in their second years as starters. And I think I might have had them back-to-back in my preseason quarterback rankings. They were both in the back end of my top 10. And these two teams that it felt like last year were both sort of hyped up as the successors within their respective conferences. Super young, emerging, talented, both win a playoff game unexpectedly, at least compared to the preseason expectations. And Green Bay got the better in this one. And I think I was a little too low on them a couple weeks ago because of the defense, really. It's the defense that has shown out recently much more and that I do think is a solid unit. So I like the Packers a lot. I think that the 3 best teams in the NFC right now are all in the
I
NFC
agree.
North.
It is insane,
It's insane.
man. And the Bears aren't that far outside of the top 10 either.
Yeah, they've got more to prove, but I agree. I mean, defense is awesome. Caleb's been playing way better. For Houston, this is just a rough showing, and it's really about the passing attack. I do have to give props to Joe Mixon, who keeps balling out. I'm not worried about the Texans because I think that this defense is very legit. I think the pass rush is awesome. I think the secondary is good. I believe in CJ deeply. I believe in this receiving core deeply, and the run game has been better. I think that the Texans are a very good football team. They just didn't have their best stuff today. I mean, they were pretty soundly outplayed in this game. If you take away turnovers, they could have gotten drubbed in this one.
Yeah, and I think this just speaks to how valuable Nico Collins is to an offense. I mean, they look
absolute dog.
Again, yeah. And Stroud's a dog too. And like I said, man, he got muzzled. Like they completely neutralized him from this game.
What did you think, real quick, before we move on? Did you see Jordan Love giving him like pointers post game, being like, "Stop taking those hits. You'll learn from these mistakes."
CJ.
Jordan Love gave CJ pointers.
I didn't see that, man. Yeah, what is he? I mean, like I guess he is like his elder by like 3 years.
He's older, but he's a second-year starter.
That's so fun. Well, it's almost like when CJ was talking to Caleb.
Like, I don't think he's better than CJ. Yeah, but CJ talking to Caleb makes more sense. It's still kind of weird, but it's like, that's a rookie literally in his first handful of games.
I think I would.
Jordan, you and CJ are very much on the same level.
I think I'd take CJ too, but Love is right behind him.
Yeah, it's very close. I think I prefer CJ too for that stabilizing factor, but Love does make more special plays, man. And you know me, I love a playmaker. It's just he does make a lot more mistakes as well. But shout out Green Bay, dude. Really impressive. Last game that we'll touch on, and then we're going to talk quickly about Deshaun Watson's injury, and we'll get into our power rankings. Bills-Titans, the game that I was at, Logan. Really the part that is most worthy of discussion here is Amari Cooper's debut. What'd you take away from that and the sort of new-look Bills out there?
Yeah, Cooper looked good. 1 TD, 4 catches, 5 targets, 66 yards, 16.5 yards per catch. I want to hone in on that TD for a second, dude. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that. That was crazy. It looked like at the line of scrimmage, Josh like checks to a different play, and you
Yep.
see, I don't know how the Titans defense didn't pick up on this in the moment. Cooper is clueless. He looks over at Keon Coleman and he throws his hands up
Yep.
like confused. And Coleman literally puts his arm forward and is like, "You're gonna run a go, like run a streak," and then like, I just that was awesome, man. And snaps a ball. He sneaks right behind the safety. Josh dots him up. Like, I don't know. I've never seen that one before, bro. That was so funny. But yeah, man, they improved. They improved, and it's a key dynamic that they needed. I thought the only bad play was 3rd and 1. He has a bad drop early in this game, and that's a part of the Amari Cooper experience, as you mentioned last week.
It
but
is.
that was really the only bad play. Like, he adds balance, he adds depth, he adds star power legitimately to this team. Keon Coleman, I thought, showed out in this one. 4 catches, 125 yards. He played a good game. I still like Khalil Shakir. That dude is just shifty, dynamic. Kincaid is as rock solid as they come. And again, the guy that makes them special is Josh Allen, who has some special playmaking plays in this game. Flushed out of the pocket, making throws on the run. That throw to Kincaid on the corner route was insane, man. What a beautiful ball. Yeah, terrific
Catch.
ball placement. Kincaid over the shoulder. But the reason that they do this trade and why I'm happy that they did, I think they needed to get better. And again, as Carson and I have talked about throughout this season and in the offseason, I thought the Diggs loss was a little bit overstated. That being said, I don't know if this Bills offense was championship caliber yet, and I do think that they are now. Like, again, I think Josh Allen is going to make you a great offense no matter what because he's that great of a singular player, but they were missing something. With Diggs, this team was the number 1 third down offense in football from 2020 to 2023. They converted 49% of their third downs. That's more than any other team in the NFL. The start of this season, they were 24%. Or, excuse me, they were 24 on ranked on third downs throughout the season, 34%. That's just uncharacteristic of a Josh Allen offense, and I think that is the component of why you go out and get Amari Cooper. They're just 3 of 10 today, 30% less than their average, and they were uncharacteristically slow to start this game. They had 3 straight 3-and-outs, 19 plays for 18 yards. But Cooper addresses the biggest need of this team, and that is another reliable receiver on third down that can address this defense, and I'm glad they went out and got them. I do believe in this offense more than I did, and they've upgraded, man. I think it's a big add for you guys, and I like it, man. I think he adds a dynamic that you guys needed.
Yeah, my question about the Bills has never been the offense, but this just unequivocally makes them better, right? I don't want at all for there to be this conversation about, oh my God, Josh needed Amari Cooper, right? Like, I've seen some people try to spin it. He was number 1 in QBR. The Bills were 2nd in offensive DVOA, which is just efficiency accounting for strength of schedule. Like, the offense overall had been quite good. Josh had been quite good, but they were missing a true number 1. And so Josh was going to lead them to be a very good offense no matter what. He was already doing it. But this puts them in the conversation for best offense in the league, right? I think it's them. I think it's the Lions. I think it's the Ravens. Those would be my top 3. When they put just like their top tier 11 personnel group out there, it's so nasty. I mean, it's like, as a Bills fan, you just take a deep breath and you appreciate it because you have Amari Cooper, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, and Keon Coleman all out on the field at the same time. Like, those are 4 legitimate pass catchers who complement each other so well. Kincaid is one of the best route running tight ends in football. He made a couple of awesome catches in this game, but he's really versatile in how you can utilize him, right? You can even get him involved in the screen game. He's good in space, very, very sure-handed, really good route runner. Shakir is just this absolute monster in space, right? Who, especially if you just get him going in the screen game, he's fantastic. Keon isn't going to create a ton of separation, but he's just this athletic jump ball monster, right? I mean, you get him one-on-one and you just put the ball where only he can get it. He will just go up and catch that on somebody's head top. And then Amari's such a complete receiver. The only exception being his hands, right? Although he made an awesome catch in this game. Josh threw a ball behind him. He just went out and snagged it. But he has the drop, as you mentioned. But the route running is elite. he's really been an explosive play threat over the past couple years. He was second in the league last year in 40-plus yard catches, and he immediately is contributing in limited snaps. I mean, I thought it was crazy seeing how much more impactful he was than a Davante Adams when Davante's out there for almost every snap. Davante's played with Aaron Rodgers for many years. Amari is totally new to this offense. He played, I would guess, fewer than half of the offensive snaps in this game, and when he's out there, he just made plays. I mean, I legitimately think it was his fourth passing down that he was on the field when he caught that touchdown pass, and he didn't know the play, as you mentioned. So Josh was balling without him, but this is just great for the team. Having a true number one like that opens up everything. It slots down everybody's responsibilities, and it's a really, really complete receiving core and a really complete offense, and they're running the ball pretty well. Ray Davis, I think, is really good. I want to see him continue to get more touches. The last 2 weeks, he's been pretty great. You mentioned the slow start. I think part of that is play calling. I mean, Brady has this tendency to start games with pretty conservative play calling where you're running a lot on early downs, and then sometimes you get behind the sticks and you're dealing with the 3rd and long. And 2 of the first 3 third downs, you mentioned the first one Amari drops. Next 2, he's not even on the field. Mac Hollins is on the field, so it's like dudes just aren't separating there. I understand that Amari's still learning the offense. I still thought he should have been on the field more just because Mac Hollins is the alternative, and God bless him, but he's a career special teamer for a reason. I want to see a little bit more aggression out of the gates for the Bills offense, right? Put the ball in Josh's hands, let him do what he does. But overall, I think this offense looks phenomenal. And I want to just defend Keon Coleman real quick because, I don't know, I saw a crazy tweet from our pal Dells over at Pick a Side talking about him in relation to Brian Thomas Jr. And somebody was like, I love Keon, but I wish we got Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas Jr. is better than Keon Coleman. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is a stud. But then Dells was like, we don't have to lie about Keon. This was before his game yesterday. I'm like, Keon is solid, man. I mean, he's the 4th target in this offense. Again, he's not a high-end separator. He doesn't have great speed in the open field. Frankly, he could have had 3 touchdowns in this game if he got his second foot down on a jump ball, which it almost looked like he did, but they called it a non-catch. They said he was out of bounds. And then he had 2 breakaway opportunities where he just couldn't outrun the DBs. But just that jump ball ability, man. I mean, that one-on-one contested catching, he is so great at that alone. For a second-round receiver, I think that he's played perfectly fine this year, and I thought that he had a phenomenal game. So not a ton to say about the Titans, you know. They're just not very good. I mean, that offense just can't get anything going. But I thought that it was really nice how the Bills just rolled after a slow start to this game. 34 unanswered.
I still think this defense is solid, but
it is. Yeah.
I mean, they're just handicapped by their quarterback. Mason Rudolph's not a playmaker.
No, it was a rough game for Rudolph, dude. Every time that he was pressured, he was missing by about 10 yards. Often just completely underthrowing dudes.
Classic.
Tough. Yeah. It was indeed. But it was fun, man. I always love coming out to a Bills game. I always love coming out to a Bills win. This one was a little unpleasant at the start, but it was great to see Amari's debut. I'm just really excited to see him on the field more and more. I think he's going to have a dominant season. I think that he and Josh are going to be a hell of a tandem, and come playoff time, that's huge, right? We need to see more from Tyler Bass. We need to make sure that this defense can be Super Bowl caliber. We need Sean McDermott to not actively mess things up, but the offense is 100% there. I have no questions about it. All right, Deshaun Watson, Logan, tears his Achilles. Going to be out for the season for the Cleveland Browns. Quite a strong reaction from the NFL world to this one. What does this mean to you?
I think it just accelerates their timeline in figuring out their long-term plans. We've been talking about this for a long time. It is the worst contract in NFL history, the fully guaranteed aspect of it. It is also the worst trade in NFL history, considering the fully guaranteed part, considering the assets that the Browns gave up to acquire Deshaun. Right now that we look at in retrospect, you could have had Will Anderson, right? You could have had Kamari Lassiter, right? These are valuable assets that the Texans have used to build up their team. You just got to be done with it, right? Stefanski the entire time, we're not going to bench him. He's our quarterback, yada, yada. Now that he's torn his Achilles, and now that we're entering a new era of the Deshaun Watson experience, we're just done. I think you got to bench the guy officially whenever he does get fully healthy next season. I think you just got to be done with him. So what is their long-term plan? I I think you just got to punt and look at the 2025 and the 2026 class and figure out who your guy is going to be, who the next quarterback that you're going to bring in is. 2025, you got Shedeur Sanders, Quinn Ewers, Cam Ward, Carson Beck, Jalen Milroe. And then 2026, if you bottomed out, it would be Arch Manning. Because I don't think you should commit to a full rebuild, right? I think some people may go, blow it all up. This defense is too good. This defense I still think is top 10 in the NFL. Myles Garrett, an elite secondary, right? Delpit, Ward, Newsome, Emerson. I like all those guys. JOK, right? This defense is way too good, I think, to commit to completely tearing down this organization. But the Deshaun Watson experiment is over. It's completely done. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to be your quarterback the rest of the season. He's not an NFL QB to me. I don't think he's a starting quarterback. He's young, sure, and I like his legs, but I think he's too inaccurate. I don't think the guy's an NFL QB. So you're just figuring out what you're doing in the future. Do you cut him in this offseason? Do you cut him in next offseason? That's Watson. Can you find a sucker to trade for him so the cap hit is worse, or the cap hit is lessened next offseason, or do you try to trade him next year? Obviously, if you trade him, that also requires the Browns giving up more capital to get rid of him. They would have to attach a first, a second, a third to get a team to take on that kind of contract. But it's done, man. You just got to be done with it. It's the worst contract ever. It's the worst trade ever. Just be done with it. You're not getting rid of Stefanski. You're not blowing this defense up. Again, it is about laying the framework to be competitive next year. It is about laying the framework to be competitive in 2026. Finding your timeline, finding your quarterback, figuring out what you do from here on, because it's not it. You know what, Carson? I'm going to go ahead and say this too. I'm okay with the Browns fans booing Deshaun Watson when he got hurt too. I have no remorse for Deshaun Watson. I have no issue with them feeling some type of way. Yeah, I know some people like Jameis wanted to go to bat for the guy. It's what you got to do because he's in your locker room.
Yeah, you don't have to go to bat for him necessarily to the extent that Jameis did, where you're like the whole world is counted out this guy.
Like,
and is
I'm
against
just saying,
him and look at him like, oh, what a hero.
I understand.
You're not gonna say, yeah, he's the worst dude ever, but you don't need to like deliver like a eulogy,
Yeah.
like being, oh my God, what a great man.
I understand Jameis's perspective, but I have no issue with the Browns booing him. And to be fair, look, man, the Browns fans were going to boo a guy playing at this level getting injured regardless of his off-the-field actions, right? It's like the Eagles fans. The Browns fans are going to tell you how they feel. It just so happens that Deshaun Watson is the worst human being off the field as well as on it, right? He can't play quarterback anyway.
Yeah, I do think that that's a good point, right? This is something that we see across sports. Morality dissipates when the bad guy is on your football team and he's playing well. All of a sudden, you don't care. Unfortunately, is very often the case. What we see almost always with fan bases is that when they have somebody who is known to be a domestic abuser on their team, or in Deshaun's case, a sexual assailant repeatedly, like it's like, hey, right, well, that guy plays for my team now, and if he's playing well, okay, well, guess what? I just don't want to acknowledge that that's the case. But Deshaun was playing horribly. So I'm not going to like give Browns fans credit for like taking a moral stance, because they didn't. They took the stance that our offense is historically awful because our quarterback is absolutely atrocious. I thought LeBron tweeting about it was crazy, bro. Why is LeBron going to bat unprompted for the serial sexual assailant, dude? Like, who does he think he is? Why? Why would you do that? What is to be gained from that? But I think broadly, yeah, people are justified, dude. Like, you know, you say, oh my God, he's a human being, right? Have some humanity. I mean, think about legitimately the dozens of women whose lives he has significantly negatively impacted, and their families and their loved ones. Like, fuck that, dude. We don't see that on TV. We don't see them crying because they tore their Achilles after making hundreds of millions of dollars that they didn't deserve. I don't feel bad for Deshaun Watson. I'm just going to come out and say that right now. The numbers for the Browns offense are crazy. This is going into last week, but I mean, they're just, Bill Barnwell tweeted out some of these, shout out. The Browns offense, out of 798 teams through 6 games since 2000, they were tied for 784th in red zone trips. They were 797th in third down conversion rate. Since 2007, out of 566 passers through 6 weeks, Watson ranked 558th in QBR, 565th in yards per dropback, 566th in first down rate. I mean, I'm sorry. I understand the offensive situation wasn't good, but anybody making excuses for Deshaun Watson is blind and is clearly a victim of the sunken cost fallacy of my quarterback invested in this dude, and I don't want to admit that he is not just a horrible human being, but a horrible football player, and he is. He is both, and now, as you mentioned, you just have to have your eureka moment far too late and say, oh, we can't continue to proceed as though this is the quarterback of our future. It's completely unserious. Draft highly at the position. I don't think you're moving off Deshaun Watson. I don't think anybody is taking on that contract regardless of draft capital. Maybe if you ship out 5 firsts, man. Like, you just can't do it. You made arguably the worst trade and signed arguably the worst contract. Well, not arguably. It is the worst contract. Whether or not it's the worst trade is arguable, and it very well might be that too. And now you have to live with that. You made your bed. You lie in it. You screwed 5 years of your football team, which sucks because your defense is there. And you just completely mangled your quarterback situation. But yeah, I'm with you, dude. I think draft highly. Try to find anybody else. I don't understand why Jameis isn't the backup. I don't understand why it's DTR. Jameis is much better.
Oh, and it was strange, too, that they did that before this game, right? That was announced.
It was Jameis the first 6 weeks, yeah.
Literally right before this game, DTR was announced as the backup. So I don't know if Jameis is hurt or he's got something going on, but he was the emergency QB. And it might not just be the worst one in NFL history, man. It might, like, when we're looking at this in, like, sports history, I think it's up there for, like, the catastrophic disasters of all time in any sport. That being said, the one thing that I've never understood about this, Carson, is, like, the fragility and the, like, protection of Watson's ego at the QB position, too. Because, like, I don't remember, at this point, like, the fan base is not behind him, right? The locker room is not behind this guy. If I'm Kevin Stefanski, and this is prior to the injury, I think this should happen now that he comes back. Like, when Watson comes back, I'm having this conversation with him. I'm telling him, hey, Deshaun, you are making all this money. We have invested a lot in you at the quarterback position, but we don't care. You're not good. Yeah. You are going to go sit on the bench, and you're going to be our second or our third quarterback, and we are not going to call upon you unless it is an absolute emergency. You are going to be our break glass if needed quarterback, and you're not going to play. The spotlight is going to be off you. We are going to pay you to sit on the bench. And again, that conversation should have already happened. I would have had that at some point this year. It's compounded by the fact that they didn't bring Joe Flacco back, considering the fact that he is still very, very capable of winning a team football games in 2024. But when he comes back, that is the conversation that I'm having with him. Look, we're going to pay you to sit. And again, I don't get the protection of his ego. What's the point now? No, he had no fans. There was nobody in the locker room going to bat for him. No. Like, I don't understand. Like, he'll be the elephant in the room. He will be the elephant in the locker room for sure. But you just can't play him. He just does not give you a good chance to win football. You read out the numbers. He's among the worst of the worst quarterbacks ever since 2000, post his anomaly of a season where the Texans won 4 games.
He was legitimately really good with the Texans. We don't need to rewrite that. I think that this is a karmic act of God in the cosmos, that this man fell off a cliff like I have never seen from a player in any sport who should still be in their athletic prime. I mean, I don't think that there's any other explanation for it. And the explanation for everything is simple, right? Why they haven't benched him. It's just because they invested too much. Clearly, this is not a dude who you can win football games with. You won football games with Joe Flacco last year. Like, this dude is actively horrible. I think Jameis would be fine. If they want to put DTR out there, okay. The Browns are just screwed. They're in a disastrous position, and the Deshaun Watson trade and contract is the reason that they are there. Let's go very quickly through our power rankings, Logan. We've already talked about a lot of these teams, but we probably won't do an NFL show later in the week because NBA starts this week, so we're going to be locked in on that. We'll do, of course, our normal Sunday night reaction, but I'm just talking about Wednesday or Friday. So we'll hit on that now. Who's in your number 1 spot?
I've got the Chiefs. Best defense in the league, phenomenally coached. They still got Patrick Mahomes, and again, they are undefeated with Mahomes playing the worst football of his career. So they, again, until further notice, will be my number 1 team.
Agreed. I don't think that there's a big gap, but as you say, they hold that status until we see it result in a loss, probably. I just think it's a very good formula, even if it's not always super impressive. Okay, who's number 2?
Yeah, there's not a large gap between my number one and number two teams, and for the most part, my power rankings have stood pat since week 5. There have been no new teams that will enter my top 10, but at number two, I have the Baltimore Ravens, one play away from sending their week 1 battle with Kansas City into overtime. We are recording this prior to the Monday Night Football game against Tampa Bay, so I don't know, barring a Baker Mayfield upset, and I don't think the Ravens would move off even if that happened. But the Ravens are my number 2 team. I think they are the best offense in football, and I still believe in this defense. I think the coaching staff is great. The gap isn't large between them and Kansas City, but the Chiefs did get the win in week 1, so the Ravens are 2 for me.
I'm sticking with Minnesota at 2. Again, I wasn't discouraged by what we saw this past week. I think that defense is elite. I think their offensive formula is very replicable. I think that they are arguably the most complete team in football. And I have, again, fewer questions about them than I do with Detroit's defense post-Hutchinson injury. So I have Detroit at number 3, and I think Baltimore is right in the mix. I think 2 through 4 is really, really close. Those are the stamped elite, few question mark sort of teams alongside the Chiefs for me.
Yeah, I also have the Lions at number 3, and they may plummet as the season goes along due to the Hutchinson injury. It's something that we've got to monitor for right now. Defense stepped up. Offense is still one of the best in the league. I've got them at number 3.
Yeah, I can't see them plummeting. I mean, the offense is just too damn good. I think no matter what, they're going to be very much in the mix in the NFC. I have the Ravens at 4. I think that this is a pretty elite football team overall. I do think that they have the defensive personnel to be really good on that side of the ball. They've been just okay overall defensively this year, but they do have a higher ceiling to tap into there. So I don't have a problem with them being 2. I guess I just think the Vikings and Lions have shown themselves to be a little bit more complete up to this point. But as we talked about, the Lamar Henry pairing in the backfield is probably the best that we've ever seen from quarterback, running back at their peak. And the offense is elite, and the defense is still good. I do still believe in the defense fundamentally. So they're pretty clearly still above the Bills, who I have in my 5 spot. I think the Bills have the potential to climb higher because I'm so high on the offense with Amari. But I just have a couple more questions. Coaching, kicking, and defense. I don't necessarily see a big gap between the Ravens and Bills, but also the Ravens are just a really tough matchup for the Bills because the Bills have really struggled to stop the run. And so because of that, I would give Baltimore's defense a slight edge. And also, I mean, that's just brutal if you draw Baltimore, as we saw a few weeks ago, when they can just run the ball down your throat.
Yeah, I've got the Vikings at 4 here. I've got the Bills at 5, so I agree with you there. The difference for me is the quarterback position. I have a different level of faith than I do with Lamar than a guy like Sam Darnold. The Vikings have one of the best defenses in the NFL. I'm confident in the skill position talent. The only thing still holding Minnesota back, and I agree with you, this isn't the week to harp on Sam Darnold, but it is Sam Darnold. That's still the reason that I can't have this team higher. So Vikings at 4 for me, Bills at 5. I still want to see more out of this defense. The defenses look good. I still want to see more from Buffalo's defense, but
yeah,
I have immense faith in Josh Allen carrying this team.
I agree. Ceiling hinges on defense, coaching, special teams. I'll go through my next 2 because they played this week. I have Packers 6, Texans 7. I was moved by this Green Bay win. I think their offense is more explosive, and I think is more complete because even though Mixon has run the ball well, I think that the Packers run game I trust significantly more overall. It's such a staple of their offense. And I think that offensive explosiveness outweighs the defensive gap just by a bit, even though I still like Houston's defense a little bit more because I've come around on Green Bay's defense. So those 2 teams are very close, but I will give the edge to the team that really soundly outplayed the other this past week.
Yeah, I've got the Packers at 6. They haven't moved far up my power rankings. They were number 7 last week. And I have the Niners at 7, so I have moved the Niners down. I still have them above Houston. The difference is Jordan Love to me between him and Brock Purdy. And then the Niners just ravaged by injuries. I'm not barring the Niners from moving up my power rankings. I definitely think that they could move back up. But for right now, they're falling and falling steadily.
Yeah, I have the Niners at 8. Frankly, I don't think that this offense is better than the Packers. I still believe in the offense. And this defense is just pretty average. And, we can talk about injuries as being something that are hurting them right now. And it's like, okay, well, at their ceiling, they look like this. I don't even know if we can presume that this team is going to get significantly healthier. A lot of these dudes are injury-prone players. And so it's not a shock when they get injured, right? We've seen it derail a season for them before. And ultimately, they just haven't put the results out there. Like, I know that our power rankings, as we've been clear about, are how good do we think you are, right? It's not just, oh, this team beat this team last week, so we reward them when we move them up. But there does come some point where it's like, you're 3-4, you haven't been impressive. And I do think that you're a legitimately flawed football team. Everybody above them, I think, is better. Some people probably still think having the Niners at 8 is too high, but I still have a lot of faith in this offense overall, and it's a talented defense. But they're just not very impressive right now.
They're not, and yeah, I mean they got a correct course. I'm gonna keep dropping the Niners until they get back fully healthy or until they show us something. At number 8, I have the team that you just spoke about too. I have the Texans here, so we do a little flip flop there. The Texans, I think, are good on both sides of the ball, and then comparison to my 9 and 10 spots, I like their quarterback more. I think they're better on defense than both of these teams overall. And I like their coaching more than both, or at least the next team, too. So I think Texans are very good, and they could move up. I was a little disappointed by Stroud this week without Nico Collins, but I think the Texans could climb higher. I need to see a little more.
Yeah, I understand that. I have in my 9 and 10 spots 2 division rivals, so I'll just compare them real quick. I have the Eagles, and then I have the Commanders. The Eagles continue to not really impress me, except this past week was a pretty dominant showing from them. But even though they're sort of sleepwalking through some of these games, and we haven't really seen the defensive improvement we like, and we haven't seen Hurts play all that well, like I really considered putting Washington higher because I think Washington's offense, presuming that Jaden Daniels is healthy and that his injury this past week isn't serious, I just think they're a better offense. But I still think that gap is outweighed by the fact that Philadelphia's defense is talented. They can be capable. I think Washington's defense is just bad. I know they had a good defensive game against the Carolina Panthers. It's the Carolina Panthers. And they put up 40 even without Jaden out there for a lot of the game against the Carolina Panthers. I think these two teams are really close. I don't want to disrespect Washington because I think they've been better. I just think that they've basically hit their ceiling because their offense has been flawless and their defense is so limited, and I think that Philly can continue to play better. And so I'm going to bet on that ceiling, just giving them a slight edge within the division.
Yeah, I like Philly's talent more. I have Philly at 9. I don't have the Commanders on my list.
Okay.
Philadelphia, Hurts continues to underwhelm me. The defense continues to underwhelm me, but they come away with a victory. And you see the difference in offensive pop with 2 things. When Saquon Barkley is available and used often, and 2, when A.J. Brown is healthy. He completely changes this offense. He is a real difference maker for Hurts. And then in my 10 spot is the team I had in my 10 spot 2 weeks ago. I still got the Seattle Seahawks. I know a lot of people have sold their Seahawks stock. The defense, I think, is getting better week after week. I think the secondary is really good. Witherspoon, Woolen, Love. I like that group. And, again, I think they continue to improve in that area every week. I don't think the Seahawks are a different team fundamentally, right? The offensive line still is not very good, but they've got a lot of skill position talent. I really like Geno. I really like the secondary, and I think the defense is improving. So the Seahawks stay in my 10 spot.
They're right in that mix. I just think the Washington offense is more dynamic, and I think that gap does outweigh the defensive gap that I see. And I do want to give props to the Eagles. I mean, it's the Giants, but they really did have a dominant defensive game. And, they had a solid defensive game against the Browns. Again, it's the Browns. It was just their offense was so lackluster outside of a couple plays. And they barely threw the ball against the Giants. As you mentioned, I mean, Saquon is just a superhero. And Hurts, runs for a couple touchdowns, but it was really the Saquon show. But there's talent there, man. And even though I think we're both out on them as contenders, I can't be out on them as a playoff team just because of the talent on that roster. All right, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in. Hope you enjoyed. We will be back business as usual this coming Sunday night with our live reactions to all the day's action. And we will be back tomorrow night reacting to the opening night of NBA basketball, and we will have numerous thoughts on everything that we see throughout this week. It is the most wonderful time of the year, Logan. The holidays are coming up, and there's no better holiday for us than basketball and football going on simultaneously. That is just an extended 3-month holiday. I can't wait for it. So you can find all of our content on both sports across our YouTube channel, across all audio platforms. And if you want more NerdSesh content, you can follow us across social media, TikTok, Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh to see clips from the show, graphics from the show, and we do power rankings and predictions and all of our trivia content. You can also join our Discord if you want. The link to that is at the link tree across our social media bios. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was NerdSesh.